Fate Be Changed, Chapter 44, Merida. "Who said that?" the conductor called. Merida stepped out from behind the tent where she had been serendipitously watching the competition. Something in her gut told her that if an attempt were to be made on the king's life, it would happen today. But so far, these Highland Games appeared to be just like all the others she had attended over the years, until she saw that Fergus's arrow had been tampered with. Merida had no way of knowing if the sabotage was connected to the threat regarding the king, but something was afoot. She could feel it. She made her way through the people gathered for the archery contest. She tore the hooded cloak from her head, letting her rich red locks fly unbound around her head. She hoped her hair would shield the fur that had been growing along her jaw the previous night. Without the knife she had pilfered from the kitchen, she had no way to shave it off in the morning. "I am Merida of Clan Dunbroch," she announced, "and I will be stepping in for my clansman, Fergus." The entire crowd seemed to inhale all at once. A flurry of murmurs and whispers began to reverberate around the grounds. Fergus's wide eyes grew wide. "Lass, what are you doing?" "What is the meaning of this?" King Douglas barked. "You were banished from this kingdom." Merida was grateful for her kirtle's full skirt. Not only did it hide her woolly legs, but it prevented anyone from noticing just how bad they were shaking. Somehow she managed to pull herself together and stand up straight as she faced her grandfather. "I am a Dunbroch, and as one I am allowed to remain in this kingdom, as is dictated by the peace alliance signed between the clans. I am also allowed to take part in the Highland Games on behalf of my clan." "Did you hear that?" It was the chieftain of Clan Fraser. He hooked a thumb at her and laughed, then said, "The lass wants to shoot the bow and arrow. Go back to the dance tent, lass." Merida stood her ground. "No, I am here to compete." What? The chieftain sputtered. "You cannot talk to me this way." "I did not plan to speak at all," Merida said. "My archery skills will speak for me." "Who is this girl?" the chieftain said. "I am—" Merida saw a swath of royal blue out of the corner of her eye, seconds before Queen Katerina arrived. Eleanor was right behind her. The queen caught her by the shoulder and jerked her around to face her. "I warned you of what would happen if you were to return to this castle," she said. "Leave." Fear knotted in the pit of Merida's belly. She swallowed the lump of panic climbing up her throat before speaking. "I request the right to compete in this contest on behalf of my clan." "Did you hear me?" the queen asked. "Leave now." The red mist flashed before her eyes again. Merida felt a growing rumbling deep in her belly. Her animal instincts were becoming harder to control. "Let her compete." Both Merida and Queen Katerina turned to see whom the words had come from. It was Lachlan. He stood underneath the Fraser flag, his arms folded casually across his chest. "The lass is correct," he continued, pushing away from the flagpole. "If she is a member of Clan Dunbroch, she has the right to take part in the games." His brow quirked in amusement. "It will not change the outcome of the contest, but it will be entertaining." "Mother," Eleanor said, putting her hand on the queen's forearm, "what harm is there? Think about what people will say if you throw this young girl out of the castle." It was clear by the queen's demeanor that she wanted nothing more than to throw Merida off the castle grounds, with her own two hands, but Eleanor had appealed to her mother's obsession with appearances. The princess knew her mother well enough to know that she would do whatever was necessary to prevent any untoward gossip. Queen Katerina slowly released her grip on Merida's arm and took several steps back. "Well, lass," Lachlan said. "You said you wanted to shoot. Shoot." Merida took her bow and quiver and stepped up to the mark. She was afraid the gloves would affect her accuracy, and she did not have time to worry about what people would think of her fur and claws. She had to act fast. She pulled off the gloves. Several people gasped. "My goodness, lass, you're hairier than 10 lads," Lachlan said. "How did that happen?" "Something I ate," she said. She brought her bow up to her chest and aimed at the target. She closed her eyes, pulling in several deep breaths before she let the arrow go. Time seemed to stop as it sailed through the air and landed on the target. Directly onto Lachlan's. The crowd was stunned into silence, but seconds later they erupted into cheers. "It looks as if we have a tie," the conductor said. No, Lachlan said. No ties will be allowed to stand. We shall have a shoot-off. Best 2 out of 3. He crossed in front of Merida and took his position, bringing his bow up to his chest once again. He took more time than he had with his first attempt. This time his arrow struck even closer to the center of the target. Merida had purposely missed the bullseye just to see what Lachlan's next move will be. She had spent much of the afternoon watching him, along with Eileen and Gregory, waiting for them to act. She wished she had seen the man Lachlan had sent to spy on the princess, but Merida had only heard his voice. He could be any of the men near the king. But if the plan was to kill the king, wouldn't they have done so by now? The competitions for the day were almost over. The betrothal announcement was to happen soon. Yet there was King Douglas, unharmed. "It's your turn," Lachlan said, his arrogance on full display. Merida returned to the mark. Just as she aimed for the target, a ruckus started behind her. 2 men in the crowd began to argue, their deep brogues intertwining. More people joined in the fracas. Merida recognized the Fraser tartan, but the other was unfamiliar. Within minutes, several other clans had taken up sides, with both men and women getting into each other's faces. The king's guards tried to get a handle on the rowdy crowd before things got any more out of control. But the more they attempted to tame the stands, the more disorderly they became. Then everything happened in a matter of seconds. Someone cried, "Watch out!" Merida felt an arrow whiz by her head. Eleanor yelled. Queen Katerina screamed. The riotous crowd was immediately silenced, and Merida turned to find Fergus splayed on the ground, with King Douglas sprawled underneath him. An arrow stood erect, its point lodged in Fergus's meaty shoulder. "Dad!" Merida yelled at the same time that Eleanor shouted, "Fergus!" They ran to his side, Eleanor arriving first. She sat next to him and cradled his head in her lap. "Get the physician!" she yelled. "Someone get the physician right now!" Several people scurried off. "Who shot that arrow?" Gawain, the king's second-in-command, demanded. "Did anyone see where it came from?" Queen Katerina asked. She knelt at King Douglas's side, along with 2 of the men Merida often saw with her grandfather. As far as she could tell, the king looked shaken, but unharmed. Her father, however, bled profusely from the wound in his shoulder. Remembering something he had taught her years before Merida went into action, she knelt next to him and tugged at Eleanor's plaid. "Give me that," she said. "We need to tie it around his shoulder so we can stop the blood." "Are you sure?" Eleanor asked. "Do as she says," Merida heard one of the men behind her say. "'Tis what we do with warriors in battle." Merida went to work, looping the plaid underneath Fergus's arm and securing it tightly in hope of stanching the blood. She looked over her shoulder and said to Gawain, "We must find who let loose that arrow. It was meant for the king." "The lass is right," the clan Fraser chieftain said. "If the Dunbroch had not stepped in, the arrow would have gone into King Douglas's heart." "The Dunbroch saved the king's life," Queen Katerina said in an astonished voice. She looked from Fergus to Eleanor to Merida, her eyes wide. "Yes, he did," Eleanor said. "He was willing to sacrifice his life for his king's." She looked to her mother and father. "He is a true hero." The refrain began to reverberate through the crowd as news of what had just happened made its way among those on the grounds. The physician arrived, and Merida left him to tend to Fergus's injury while she sought out Gawain. She ran to the king's second-in-command, grabbing him by the arm and pulling him away from the others gathered around the royal family. "I know King Douglas does not trust me," Merida started. "But what the king does not realize is that it is his own people he cannot trust. This was no accident, Gawain. There is a plot to kill the king." "What are you talking about, lass?" "There is no time to explain." She looked around. "Where is Lachlan Fraser?" "He is right," Gawain said before pointing to the crowd. His words trailed off. "He was just there." "We must find him. He is behind this scheme," Merida said. "Lachlan, Eileen, and Gregory." "No," Gawain shook his head. "You're mistaken." "I am not," Merida said. "I heard them plotting to harm the king. I tried to warn you, but I was thrown out of the castle before I could." She captured his arms in her hands and looked him in the eye. "You must believe me. Lachlan wants to kill the king." "Why would he want to do that? He is due to marry the princess. If he killed her father, he could rule," Merida said, cutting him off. Lachlan's motives had to be obvious to everyone by now. If he is married to the princess and something happens to the king, Lachlan is that much closer to ruling the kingdom." "And you think Eileen and Gregory know about it?" Gawain asked. She nodded. "They are assisting him. I heard them with my own ears, and I saw Eileen and Lachlan together in the corridor near the larder. I fear they have been planning the king's demise for some time." Horror and disappointment wared with each other in Gawain's eyes. Merida could tell how greatly this affected him, and he had likely both known Eileen and Gregory for their entire lives. Gawain dispatched several men to go search for the traitors. When she told him about the unnamed spy, Gawain knew exactly who it was. "It has to be Lachlan's younger brother, Lennox," he said. Trusting that Gawain and his comrades would handle those behind the plot, Merida returned to the area where she had left Fergus and Eleanor, but they were no longer there. She learned that Fergus had been taken into the castle and was being tended to by the physician. Merida rushed to the castle to find Eleanor sitting by the door of a small chamber just inside the grand entrance. Merida's stomach dropped. Fergus's injuries must have been more serious than she first thought if they could not even take him to a proper bedchamber to tend to his wound. "How is he doing?" Merida asked. Eleanor looked up to her. "The physician is with him now." "I figured as much," she said. She began to pace in front of the door. "Do you know how he is doing? Is he in danger of dying?" "Dying? The stubborn mule would not allow anyone to help him walk to the castle." Before Merida knew what she was about, Eleanor reached out and grabbed her hands. "This is why you purchased those gloves in the village, isn't it?" Eleanor asked. She flipped Merida's hands back and forth, studying them. "What could you possibly have eaten to cause this? It is as if you were a legend of the Black Bear come to life." Merida's breath caught in her throat. Then Eleanor laughed. "Maybe that is what we should tell those who do not believe in our legends. It may scare someone into changing their ways. Make them see things from another person's perspective, as the legend proclaims." Merida's heart swelled at the familiar words. She realized just how much she had changed since she had eaten that cake, and not just on the outside. She was not the same girl who thought only about what she wanted, without considering her duty to protect and support her kingdom. After witnessing the way Eleanor had been willing to put aside her plans to uncover the threat to McCameron Kingdom, Merida understood how important this role was. She no longer saw her responsibilities as a burden. They were an honor. "I know that I now see things differently," Merida said. "And I have to thank you for that, Princess. You have shown me what it means for a leader to take care of her people. Just look at what you did for me. You helped a young lass that you did not even know." "I believe that was one of the best decisions I have ever made," Eleanor said. Merida could barely speak with a lump of her emotion suddenly clogging her throat. "Enough of this," Merida said. She would turn into a blubbering mess if they continued. Back to Fergus. Did he really walk to the castle unassisted? Eleanor nodded, a frustrated scowl on her face, but then her expression softened and a light entered her eyes. "Fergus Dunbrock is one of the most stubborn men I have ever met, but also the bravest. I cannot believe he took an arrow for my father." "I knew it. You liked him," Merida said, unable to mask the delight in her voice. "I do not," the princess protested. Immediately she laughed. "Well, maybe I do," she finished. An infectious smile drew across Eleanor's face. Merida did not need any more proof that her mother was well on her way to falling in love with her father, and Merida knew Fergus felt the same way. For the first time since the start of this harrowing ordeal, she felt true relief. Just then the physician exited the room. "How is he?" Eleanor and Merida asked at the same time. The physician shrugged. "He is made of sturdy stock. It takes more than the tip of an arrow to hurt him." "Can we see him?" the princess asked. Merida took the urgency in her voice as another sign of growing affection. The physician led them into the room. Fergus sat in a chair like he was waiting for a meal instead of being treated for an arrow to the shoulder. Eleanor rushed to his side and took both of his hands in hers. She fussed over him in a way Merida had witnessed her doing 1,000 times. "Finally," Merida said in a relieved whisper. Her parents were finally together.